No worries. All right, guys. So, the lesson we looked at the Tet Offensive. We looked about how that was really a turning point in the war. Today, I want to move into. You grunted, sir.
I didn't grunt anything.
It was a grunt.
Get on with it.
Grunting.
You're wasting their time. Move.
I'm doing the introduction.
Oh, that an introduction. Oh my God.
Anyway, so we're going to move into the anti-war movement because we mentioned that, well, I mentioned, you guys listened, that the Tet Offensive really got the anti-war movement going in America and Australia. Okay, we're going to see how that works now through these great little infographic map things, graphs that DMAX made here. Okay, so do you want to talk about these 7 polls? What were these?
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so I'll just go back to what Sir said there. If you think about it, the Tet Offensive is the turning point of the war. It's the war, it's the battle which you win, but you lose. Like the PowerPoint said, the Americans win this hands down. They nearly wipe the VC out. And the North Vietnamese suffer huge losses as well. And on the ground, the Americans win. But this war is not won or lost on the battlefield. It's lost at home. It's lost in the opinion polls. Now, what we have here is 7 polls that were taken from 1965, as it says there. See, I can read dates, to 1970. And what they show you is the change in public opinion.
Now, the thing that we want to know, sir, because you've been around for quite a while, I think. Did you
ever since Noah fell out of the
Did you participate in these polls? You're probably,
No, I didn't.
In your early 40s, weren't you?
I was alive at this time, but I wasn't actually in Australia, so they didn't invite me. I'm very hurt about that. I would like to go back and retro answer them.
All right.
Anyway, the really important point is that basically one question is answered. Now, you have to realize the Roy Morgan Research Company is one of the main, or was one of the main poll-taking companies in Australia. And generally, it was considered to be very reliable. Now, what you have is this question was inserted into some fairly wide-ranging polls. So there might be something, question about what do you think about the taxation policy of the Liberal government in relation to company tax?
Sounds awesome. I love that.
It's really exciting. I know what I would say, but it would be too rude to print. So they would put these questions, but this was one of them that was inserted there. And it was basically to see how the Australian people felt about their government. And so the question, as it says, do you think Australia should be involved in the war in South Vietnam? So it's a fairly bland, straight question, no tricks here. It's just not trying to get answers, any specific answers. It's quite a very simple question. Even Mr. Nichols would be able to answer it.
I struggle, I think, still. I'm half right.
Oh, what do we put yes or no? Yes or no? I'm confused.
Anyway, we might look at the graphs here, and then we can ask what he would have answered were he were in Australia back then. Okay, not gallivanting in some other, where were you, Ethiopia or something?
Yeah.
Ethiopia. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, so our Gallup poll is 1965 to 1970, so over 5 years. You can see the first poll here. Okay, down here is your all-important key, your table here. So the yes votes, you can see they are really, really high. Okay, no votes, well, they're still there.
Okay.
And question
before he rabbits on too far, look at the structure of your poll to start with. As you can see, the blue lines that run vertically, those are your years. So this first poll is September 1965. And what's really important is that the government has just declared its intention to send troops to Vietnam. So we've already introduced conscription, and if you look at it, you can see that there is strong community support for this.
Why was that, sir? Why is everyone on board with sending our boys to Vietnam?
Well, first thing is that this is in the middle of the Cold War, and we are very anti-communist. 1965, we very strongly support the Americans and the way that they do things. We are their strong allies. So most people in the community are quite happy with good old Robert Menzies, and remember Menzies is the Prime Minister at this time.
Yeah.
And so you notice up there what we call the silent majority. This is the group in the community, and it's quite strong today. It certainly surfaced in the last election, didn't it?
Did so, that's right.
My oath, it certainly did, boy. What do you think, HG? Yeah. Anyway, silent majority means that they're not particularly vocal in what they think. They won't get out and protest, but by geez, the country that doesn't listen to them pays for it at the election. So you will see that there is a fairly strong support behind the government, but it's not vocal. More important is to look at the no vote. Notice that it's sitting just close to 30%. So it's not insignificant. Notice it says it's significant. That's a significant word. Significant is a significant word, isn't it, sir?
Important word, isn't it?
It is important. It is vital.
Important word.
Right. Okay. But it's a significant minority in the fact that it may grow. And the second thing is I would put down as what I call it's a squeaky wheel. And what is the point about squeaky wheels?
Well, they make noise, sir, don't they?
And what happens to them?
Well, they tend to wreck everything else.
Exactly. And they are the ones that tend to get greased. So a lot of people tend to listen to them more than anyone else. So this squeaky wheel means you've got people here who are quite vocal in what they think about it, and they're willing to actually get out and protest. It's the basis. Again, look at the yellow, because that's the, I don't know. I don't know whether to put yes or no. Is there a maybe? Yeah. That is a number to look at, though, because that always tells you whether this question is of interest to the community. And notice that it's sitting at about a little bit of, probably that looks to be maybe somewhere in
about 16%, I reckon.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
16.
It's
look, it says down here, doesn't it? Look, here's the little, it says down here 16%. So
yeah,
got it right.
Oh, look, the numbers are there. I did put them in.
I was talking about that at the start, and you rudely interrupted me, remember?
Okay.
Don't worry about that, though.
Yeah, shut up. Right. So 16% tells you that probably the community doesn't know where Vietnam even is, or this group really doesn't. What we want to see is if it actually goes down a bit. That will tell us that Vietnam is starting to sink into some people's consciousness. They're actually beginning to realize it's a country somewhere. Don't know where it is, but hey, it might be a good place.
Because you've got to remember as well, I'm just going to check this thing is still recording. I'm hoping it is. It is. That Vietnam, there's no real Vietnam refugees or immigrants out here yet. There's no Vietnam restaurants, no Thai restaurants. It's just your meat and veg. I know. Think about that.
Oh, you remember that foreign muck?
You go to the shop and you buy a pie, and that's what you eat. You know?
Yeah, pie and peas and chips.
You don't know where this place Vietnam is, you know? Anyway, let's move on to the next poll, okay? See here that the curve is, you might say the curve's flattening a bit, sir. That's a common term used today. Now, there's some significant dates here as well that we have to take note of. So this first one here, that's come up, the death of first Nasho, Private Nowak. Right now, he died through, was that self-harm?
No, I think it was an accident.
But that's significant because, you know, this person who was supposedly being conscripted into the army has now been killed. So the first casualty for these conscripted soldiers, although there's that whole idea, you know, were these Nachos forced to go to Vietnam? Well, Eddie says no, but believe it or not, the Australian War Memorial says yes. So
the War Memorial doesn't know what it's talking about.
I think I trust Eddie's version more than them, actually. 8th of August here, Battle Long Tan, okay. A significant victory for the ATF here.
But with 18 KIA.
18 killed in action, that's important. But the victory, I think, is important too as well.
Yeah.
We're doing good work over there, perhaps.
And the American President, Lyndon B. Johnson, visits Australia.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of protests. and they arrest a conscientious objector, Bill White. Okay, these dates are important because I was saying, okay, is this actually changing the polls? Like, seriously, our first Nasho's been killed. No! 18 killed. But if you look at the polls, no, it really hasn't changed that much. And if anything, there is a slight rise. It's going to peak in 67, as you can see. And even the anti-war minority is actually declining somewhat. I don't know, where is Vietnam? They continue on pretty much as before, which tells you that Vietnam still really isn't hitting people's consciousness.
Remember as well, 1967, you can see the drop off there for the anti-war movement there. They're losing some momentum, it seems, and perhaps that's part of what's being reported in Vietnam, that the war is being won, the end is now in sight, things are going well.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
And so they're losing reason to protest and to be squeaky. Perhaps that's a reason. So I wonder what happens after 68. So I wonder. That would be quite interesting.
Move this on.
All right, let's keep going. I thought you had more to say. What about this bloke here, though, before we move on? Bill White. You didn't talk about him.
There's a nice picture of him. You can deal with him later, but he's a conscientious objector. Made a lot of noise. Yeah. And certainly it got people moving, but as you can see, it is not really hitting the consciousness of the Australian people.
All right. Okay. Well, let's see what happens now. Oh, no. What's happened here? Look, Red's really shot up, hasn't it? 1968. Now, remember, guys, 1968, Tet Offensive, reported in the media. So that silent majority has dropped down significantly, and it looks like some of those supporters have jumped onto that anti-war movement. So you've seen a real reversal of trends here, haven't you? Okay. So do you want to talk about some of these things here?
Okay, so we have two major battles, Coral and Balmoral. Again, strong Australian victories in one sense, but there is some serious questioning. And they're not being actually presented. The media is starting to question what's going on a lot more. They're starting to get quite a bit more aggressive about it. Then the really big one is, this has nothing to do with Australia, but a group of American GIs go berserk, and they massacre this village at a whole lot of villages at a place called Mclellan. Shortly after that, before that, you get the Tet Offensive being launched. And this is where, remember, if we go back to the Tet Offensive, General Westmoreland has been getting up for years and saying, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, with an American accent, which I can't get putting on right now.
I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh,
is that how you do it?
Yeah, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, he's been getting up and saying this for years, and suddenly these things show that, hey, the war is not going well. Another big thing is starting to cut in. A lot more people are owning colour TV. Well, colour TV will come in soon, but people are seeing the news on the TV, and they're starting to see the Americans in action. And the Americans do everything better and bigger and better than we do, and exciting. But the trouble is, you're starting to see a lot more violence, a lot more, and you can see it starting to affect. Now, the government should wake up to this. They can see that their support is actually dropping, and the opposition is becoming stronger. Notice that the whatever's happening vote is fluctuating a little bit, which tells you that people are starting to really, Vietnam is actually entered into some people's consciousness.
It's waking up Australia, isn't it, sir?
Yes, and the protests are being heard. That rise in the red is should be very worrying to the government. Trouble is that you still got this Liberal government that thinks, well, even though Menzies has gone, we're kind of entitled to government. So they're not listening as much as they should.
All right, let's keep. Oh no, look at this. The crossover has happened. It's like Christmas up there, doesn't it? Christmas for the anti-war movement. Polarization.
Critical mass.
Critical mass. So there's some significant change here, isn't there? Look at the anti-war movement. It's jumped hugely. It's overtaken our majority, or it has become the majority, I'm sorry, and it is dictating terms now in Australia. And this is going to have serious repercussions, sir, isn't it, for, I guess, the government in Australia? You know, the Labor government is going to, I guess, ride on the back of this movement and get into power, aren't they?
Yes. They're not going to get an electoral victory yet, but it's coming. It is coming. 1970, we're going to have a change of government.
Who was that? It was time, wasn't it?
It was time.
It was time.
It was time. Gough Whitlam, that was the man. Okay, now, a couple good terms to look there. Critical mass, that comes from nuclear fission. When you build up enough...
You lost me, sir.
Critical, yeah, no, that was easy. Back in theory, I would have said. But anyway, critical mass means that our squeaky wheel significant minority has now actually built to such an extent that they are now in a position to change public opinion. Okay? Furthermore, polarization means that the viewpoints of both sides are spreading much wider and further apart. People are becoming very strong, and this is hard in Australia because Australians tend to be, well, how would you describe Australians, sir?
Easygoing, just don't really care that much.
I would have said more so close to laid back that they could be confused for comatose, but that's okay. They don't like getting out there and making noises. But do you notice this is very significant? You're getting very noisy protests out on the streets, and it's being listened to, and most people are now slowly turning against the war. That crossover is the critical moment. And as you can see, a good example is the event that I give you on the 6th of May. There is a battle at Binbar, which is a little village just north of Nuidat. I knew that. Okay. Binbar was a brilliant Australian victory. A couple Centurion tanks got ambushed. But they called up support, and then they moved forward towards the village of Binbar. The Viet Cong, who were holding out in Vietnam, in Binbar, used the villagers as human shields. Mm-hmm. And the Australians had a really difficult fight of getting in, trying to save as many villagers as they could, and they worked really hard at it, while the Viet Cong are firing at them, and they've disabled one of the tanks. The Australians do a magnificent job, and if you read the story about the battle, it was a first-rate victory for the Australians. However, what gets reported in the press is Australians massacre villagers, innocent villagers, while charging into a South Vietnamese village. And clearly the press is, well, you saw the picture of poor old Loam who shot the VC guy. You can see the press has really turned against the war and the Australian military.
Bad news is good news for the press, that's for sure, isn't it? You know?
Nothing like a good story.
That's right, yep.
Whether it's true or not.
That's right, doesn't matter. All right, poll 8 here, October 1969. We get the moon landing on around then. And what we have is this plateau as well. So we have this the radicalization of the electorate here, and now it's plateaued, and we see this kind of sticking to this this cause to pull out of the war. Okay, it's solid. It's not going away. It's going to stay there, and it's got significant repercussions for Australia as well. You can see up here. There's these words: moratorium marches. Okay, what's a moratorium march, sir?
Okay, as we'll find out later when we actually look at the anti-war movement and how it developed, the moratorium marches were the kind of last phase of it. Mm. And basically what happened was the Labor government, the unions and others basically said, go on strike to protest the war. And so huge numbers of people came out onto the streets. I mean, when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about 70 to 80,000 people protesting in Sydney, in Martin Place, or down in Melbourne, blocking up the traffic for a whole day. Australians just simply drop their work and walk out to protest.
What about in Bomaderry? Right? How many people protested in Bomaderry, sir?
Oh, some guys and a dog went out, I think. They sort of waved a few flags or something. Yeah, commas, go out. Yeah, whatever.
Please get the ball back inside.
5 minutes into that. Anyway, but if you look at the plateau is important, and notice the space between the two poles. There's quite a bit of distance in the period in which it was asked. Like quite a few months have gone by. You can see there's a string of poles all very close together, and we see this crossover, and Sir is quite correct in pointing out that in fact the squeaky wheel, this significant minority, has now become the mainstream.
Yeah.
And mainstream politics, it looks like they're coming closer together, but if I was in the Liberal government, I'd be going, next election, we're definitely going to lose. Yeah. There is no way we're getting through with this. Clearly, this issue of South Vietnam, the Vietnam War, is overtaking every other issue, and it is going to propel. And in fact, Australia's role, if you look on the other side, you will see that Prime Minister Gorton has actually started to reduce the Australian numbers, and the Australian troops are coming home. By the time the Labor government actually comes into power, there will not be any Australian troops in there except the ones guarding the embassy.
Do you think it's too little too late? He's seen this collapse of his support, and he's realised, well, I've got to do something at least to appease these voters. And who knows? You know, Hail Mary might save the situation, you know?
Yeah, well, it ain't going to happen.
Not happening.
It's time, mate. Yeah. It's time. It's time they went. It's finished.
It's finished. Now, sir.
Party's over.
We asked this question at the start. If you're in Australia, what would you have voted?
Well, I came back in 1973, so the feelings about the Vietnam War were still going on. And tell you the truth, I'm a bit of a Gough Whitlam product.
A Gough, eh?
Yeah. He a good bloke. He good bloke.
All right.
Yeah. He did. Now, when I came through, of course, this was largely over, but I would probably have been voting along on that red line from probably late 1968.
So you're a sheep. You follow the herd.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
That's right.
We, of course, only got the information that the press would actually give us. Before that, my parents, of course, influenced my votes a lot, and I was a strong Liberal person. I actually didn't vote for Gough in 1970 because I was too young, but I remember my family was definitely against him. But I was sort of thinking, oh yeah, maybe Gough's got a point, logic, because he was going to give me free education. He's good.
Give it to anyone back then.
Even somebody as dumb as me. But anyway, the point is within a few years, I'd begun to sort of question, and of course, when I really did a study of Vietnam and actually put these PowerPoints together, because I really didn't know a lot. I saw all the stuff and sort of grew through it, but you often don't listen to it. And particularly listen to somebody like Eddie Phillips. Largely my opinions have changed, you know, like I think that our Australian Army did a very good job in Vietnam, and that we did well. And I also have a lot more time for the American point of view when you read about it, and you, in the end, when you find out what actually happened to Vietnam after that, you know, it's a long, tragic story, and it doesn't finish with the Vietnam War. Right. But hey, you get a more balanced view as you get older, or at least you hope you do.
Yeah, that's right. All right, sir.
Mellow, sir. Mellow.
We'll do mellow.
I bet we do some mellow. You got any? You know, we can after school, you know, a couple of those
ciders.
Oh, cider, yeah. He's good.
He loves his ciders. If you want to give him a gift, year 10, cider is his drink of choice. There he goes. All right, guys, that'll do us today. I think we've rabbited on for long enough. Gee, 24 minutes. You guys must be full on hibernating now after listening to that. All right. Well, there's going to be some questions on this, not too many, okay? But we'll see you next time.